device?
You can. I would stand by.
If I had one, I would talk into it.
He got back from St. Mary's pretty quick.
I don't know if I would say that. It was 2 hours in the snow.
Yeah.
Can you say just a few words in chat, please? Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah, it's a good idea. If we ever see it.
Maybe. Yeah.
I'm prepping myself to stay here until like all night. I don't know if metros. I came from like, I don't know if metros will be there.
Oh, yeah.
My friend just
No, I'm just gonna do a bar and just work right now.
Where are you gonna sleep?
I don't know. I'll figure that shit out later. That's a 2 a.m. question.
Oh, God.
Ground planning is terrible.
Yeah, I know.
What's the first time yet?
I'm actually close to it.
Okay, so you could
One.
And then.
yeah, and then walk for like hours, get frostbite.
Yeah.
Snowshoe.
Hey, Joey.
I could just, yeah, like I'm gonna go to
You did fishing, bro?
I mean,
Okay.
sure.
Oh,
No,
why
VRE
not?
is not running. I'm worried that nothing will run above ground.
You should just go home.
Yeah, okay. Everybody else said I'm like working from home and not working.
Yeah, I know. You can tell your rest of my hours.
Did you run out of a while?
No, that's fine.
I know, finally. I don't know how that works.
Every once in a while. Every 4 or 5 years.
Enough time to have fun.
Summer ends now.
Yeah, so.
What do we want now?
Yeah.
But wait,
I was surprised.
yeah, the roller screwed, it's up to 40%. This is the guy from.
Back now.
This is the
Yeah,
guy
I
from.
know, that's right.
I want to watch it from upstairs. See, there's an opening.
Anyway.
Yeah. Oh,
the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't be a son of time for that.
Little premium?
Yeah, that'd be 6 copies.
Your mama fixed it.
Oh, that's right.
Well, she's probably doing
Yeah, I'll probably I feel like you have had that knowledge. Yeah. That was probably.
Pieces, they're all, there's different academies.
Right.
They're all.
Yeah. Yes. But yeah.
Since you graduated, you got a custodian. Road pretty nuts, actually. Yeah. Just kind of clinging to the, yeah.
Well, right, but it's like you said, it's good. What was your
It's like that,
4 inches.
it's just like
We're
resting.
doing
Plus.
prices right. It's
6 years ago.
And Aaron's here 2 inches. Are you trying to take me over here?
No, I said 5.
Elevator position, it's kind of position.
I know I'm trying to get Debbie down there.
Oh, you are going over.
Yeah, I did go.
Yeah, if that's really be like half an inch or so.
That's what Tuesdays you assume they
Russell, is your replacement? Is there a heavy emphasis on veterans preference on that job?
do there, everything does.
Gotcha.
And they shut all the doors to me.
I hope that
How do you come in?
Oh, good. There's no shortage.
I walked in there with like 5 hour.
It's not bad. There's some, you know, a lot of people get laid off.
Yeah.
They got this here today too. People must know the pictures from Charlotte. Some like he got laid off.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
We'll start in about 1 minute. Maybe 2 minutes.
Come on, JR. Make up your mind.
That's the folks coming.
Yeah, we'll put Susan, you're next, so why don't you just sit here, and Greg, why don't you get over here?
Nobody's going to stand back out.
Lisa, you want to come over here on this side?
Standing closer to 40%.
Why don't you stand by me, Lisa? We're good.
40%.
Good morning. I'm Lamar Alexander, Chairman of the Senate's Health Committee. I'm going to make a brief statement, and then I'm going to ask my colleagues here from the Senate and the House to each make statements. You know them, but they'll introduce themselves. Senator Collins will follow me, and then I'll step back up and see if you have questions of me or any of the other senators or members of Congress. Nothing is more important to Americans than health care, and nothing is more frightening than the prospect of not being able to afford health insurance, which is the case for a growing number of Americans. We're talking today about the plumber who makes $60,000, who pays for all of his own insurance, and whose insurance bill is $20,000. And we're talking about a proposal that was developed in a bipartisan way that would reduce his insurance rates by 40%, or take the $20,000 premium down to $12,000. We're talking about Marty, the farmer in Tennessee, who told me recently her insurance had gone from $300 a month to $1,300 a month. We would reduce her rates by 40%, according to Oliver Wyman Consulting. We're talking about 9 million Americans who get no subsidy to help buy their insurance, whose premiums are skyrocketing, and we propose to reduce their rates by 40%. I said we've developed this in a bipartisan way. We had bipartisan hearings in the Health Committee. More than half the members of the United States Senate attended the hearings or coffees in connection with that. All of the principles in our proposal have broad bipartisan support. They include regulatory reform, the 1332 innovation waiver. They include 3 years of cost-sharing subsidies to pay for deductibles for low-income Americans. They include 3 years of $10 billion a year reinsurance. Representative Costello, Senator Collins especially have pushed that, allowing states to take the sickest Americans, pay for their bills, and reduce the rates for everybody else. It includes $1 billion a year more for New York State, $130 million more for the state of Minnesota. It includes a change so New Hampshire can mix its Obamacare and Medicare savings that would apply to all states. Our proposal is supported by the President of the United States, by the Speaker of the House, by the Majority Leader of the Senate, by most governors, by most insurance commissioners, and it's being blocked in the omnibus bill for one reason and one reason alone, and that is that Democrats refuse to apply the Hyde Compromise on abortion funding that has been in every appropriations bill since 1976 and applies to virtually all other health care spendings. They insist on the so-called Stupak language, which they were able to pass when they had a Democratic president, 60 Democratic senators, and a Democratic House. So our hope is that this will be in the omnibus bill. We want Americans to look ahead to October 1 when the rates are announced. We want them to know we have a proposal that will lower your rates by 40%, and we'd like for them to be able to see who voted for that and who voted against that. Senator Collins.
Thank you very much, Senator Alexander, and all of my colleagues here who have worked so hard on this very important insurance stabilization and rate reduction package. Congress faces a fundamental question. Do we want to take action to significantly reduce the cost of health insurance for millions of Americans? Or are we going to miss this opportunity? If Congress fails to act, insurance rates in the individual market will skyrocket this fall. This will directly harm the 9 million Americans who pay for their own insurance without government or employer assistance, such as a fisherman in Maine who is now paying $10,000 for his insurance premium with a $5,000 deductible. It will hurt low-income Americans who would receive help to pay for their deductibles and co-pays. Healthcare premiums are already too expensive under the Affordable Care Act. Last year, the average price of the Obamacare Silver plans, which are the most popular plans, increased by, on average, 34%. A growing number of counties in our country have no insurer or only one insurer. Inaction will only exacerbate the premium spikes and market instability that we have already seen. Americans expect us to come together to provide real relief from the rising cost of health insurance, and that is exactly what our plan would do. Our proposal is the last opportunity to prevent these rate increases from taking effect this fall, and our package will help stabilize the market. Every study has shown that our bills would make health insurance more affordable. For example, according to the leading healthcare experts at Oliver Wyman, the legislation we have proposed would lower individual health insurance premiums in the individual market by as much as 40% compared to what people will pay if Congress doesn't act. It will also, according to Wyman, expand coverage to an additional 3.2 million individuals. Dozens of healthcare, consumer, and business groups have called upon Congress to take action to lower premiums for millions of Americans and their families. These groups include the American Hospital Association, Blue Cross Blue Shield, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the American Medical Association, and a host of patient advocacy organizations. It would be incredibly disappointing if some members derailed this serious effort to reduce the cost of health insurance for millions of people. While members may disagree with certain provisions, the time has come for each member to decide, are you for lower rates and more affordable coverage for the 16 million Americans who get their insurance from the individual market, or are you for sitting back and letting their insurance rates go up once again this fall, making health insurance even less affordable? In my view, the answer is clear. We must not lose sight of what the goal is, and that is making health insurance more affordable for millions of Americans. Including these bills in the omnibus is the right thing to do, and it is urgent that we do it.
Well, thank you very much. As Chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, I join with my colleagues in the Senate in supporting this effort. I want to thank Senator Collins, Senator Alexander, and the others, Senator Graham, and others here today, and especially thank Ryan Costello, my House colleague, who's been our lead on this at the Energy and Commerce Committee. just as they've talked about. I have constituents in Oregon that make just enough. They don't get any of the subsidies. They're the ones who are getting punished in the Obamacare exchange with higher rates year after year after year. And not only in higher premiums, but also in higher deductibles. They're being literally priced out of health insurance that they've always been able to afford in the past. We can fix that with this proposal. Health insurance providers have told us that premiums will go up 20% this year if Congress fails to act. We have to act. This is our best opportunity. The plan has been put together, strikes an extraordinary balance of decreasing premiums while also saving taxpayer dollars. We rarely get this kind of win-win situation in Washington, and I think we should take advantage of this opportunity for our constituents back home. Our Democratic friends have raised concerns, as you heard, about the Hyde language to be a part of this package. I think that's disingenuous, at best, for a party that's taken thousands of votes over the multiple decades to affirm these same Hyde protections to now balk at this proposal. It makes you think that maybe they want the political argument in the fall rather than solve the problem today. We all agree that a 40% decrease in premiums for the next couple of years would leave more money in the pockets of working Americans and allow them to afford the health insurance that they and their family need. You've heard from Senator Collins about the health care groups that support it, the small business groups that support it. I can tell you farmers and ranchers and entrepreneurs all across the country and in my district are clamoring for our help. It needs to be bipartisan. It needs to happen. It's a no-brainer, and we need to get it done. Thank you very much. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan Costello, leader on the Energy and Commerce Committee.
Thank you. Good morning. I want to take you through the life cycle of this a little bit. I did not think that the President should have discontinued CSRs until Congress was able to take it upon itself to appropriate CSRs. I don't think that the executive branch has the constitutional mechanism to do that, but they have done that. We're now at a point in time where we do need to bring CSRs back into the fold. And the thought here was, let's do something common sense and let's do something not bipartisan, but nonpartisan. Because if you do something in the healthcare realm that doesn't have any political controversy to it, to me, that's the best way to get something like this solved. So I was very surprised that Democrats came out of the weeds to object to this on the notion that somehow we should start in the congressional appropriations process disregarding Hyde provisions. If you look behind me, every single one of these legislators, and I hope I'm not besmirching their reputation, is pretty middle of the road trying to get stuff done. This is not an ideological warrior type healthcare reform package. This is, let's fund the CSRs, let's create a federal fallback, and then ultimately, over the 2 years that they're funded, when states have the reinsurance pool set up as they find appropriate, we'll be able to see what works and what doesn't work so that when we continue on healthcare reform, we'll be able to find out how to go about reducing healthcare costs for every single state in this country. It is bewildering to me that Democrats do not want to lower health insurance premiums in 2019. I do hope that they realize that states are going to administer the reinsurance pools as they find appropriate, and that these concerns related to Hyde provisions, which have always been around, that we're not recreating the wheel here, we're not trying to poison the well, we're actually asking Democrats, come on board and help lower health insurance premiums. And so quick action is necessary to provide much-needed relief to families, businesses, and individuals struggling from steadily rising health insurance costs. The necessary time to implement a thoughtful, carefully tailored program that best fits the needs of each state's unique patient population is now. That's why we have reinsurance with a federal fallback, giving states ample time to develop their own reinsurance programs and providing certainty to insurers so that they can deliver immediate premium relief to the American people. I'm pleased to turn it over to Senator Graham.
Well, I really miscalculated the politics of this issue. We spent an hour on the phone with the President last Saturday, Senator Alexander, myself, Collins, and Congressman Walden, and really good questions, very engaged President. And we asked him, would you please support this? And he said, okay, it makes sense to me. What do you want me to do? I want you to call Paul Ryan. I want you to call Mitch McConnell. I I want you to line up Republicans. We're going to get pushback from our friends in the Freedom Caucus. He says, I'll do it. He got on the phone, and he did exactly what he said. Paul said yes. Mitch said yes. Our friends in the Freedom Caucus said no, but we got the votes on our side to win the day. And out of nowhere came this objection by our Democratic friends based on abortion language that has been in law for decades. So what does this mean to people in South Carolina? If you're in the category previously described, making too much to get a subsidy, but not enough to be self-sustainable without some help when it comes to health care, you're really going to get clobbered in October. And I hate it. This is the second day of spring, and the Congress had a chance to help people in the fall, beginning in October. The premiums are going to go up for no good reason. Let it be said that the Republican Party, led by the President, was willing to continue a program of subsidies, sort of against our view of how you do things, but it made definite sense to me. I try to work with Democrats where I can, and I am just really disappointed that people who are bleeding budget-wise are going to continue to hemorrhage. Family budgets have been decimated because of increased cost of health care, and the Congress could stop the bleeding. And all we have to do is continue what we've done in the past, and I am just disappointed. It tells me how far we've fallen as an institution. If we can't do this, I'm not so sure we'll be able to do anything constructive in the future. Senator Rounds.
Hi, Mike Rounds out of South Dakota. Before coming to this job, I served 10 years in the South Dakota legislature, 6 as the majority leader, and then 8 years working as governor in the state of South Dakota. We did a lot of the reform efforts on our health care during that time period. We'd actually created a program where we had guaranteed renewable policies. We had different limits in terms of how fast premiums could go up and so forth. During the time that I was governor, we created a reinsurance plan where we basically allowed individuals that couldn't get insurance anyplace else to have a product available to them. And then we would spread the risk of those for those individuals over the entire marketplace. In this particular case, when Obamacare came into being, it required that those particular types of pools be eliminated. What we're trying to do here is to provide the states with the tools to be able to once again take care of the needs of their individual populations based upon those geographic needs that they had. An example, today your individual health care products are skyrocketing. And one of the reasons why they've gone up so much is because there's a concentration of individuals that have no place else to go to get their health insurance that are in the individual market. Some of them because they may not be able to hold down a full-time job because of health care concerns. Some because they simply haven't been able to buy insurance, or they work for themselves, but they have a pre-existing condition which is expensive to address. In all those cases, the very high cost for individuals is now borne by one very small, about 6% of the total market population. And the concentration there drives the price for those individuals up. What we've tried to do with this particular legislation is to allow for a reinsurance product to be put in place on a state-by-state basis that spreads the cost for those very high-cost individuals over a larger tax base. This will reduce those premiums significantly. And at the same time, we've asked that Section 1332 of the existing Obamacare product be modified so that states can more easily be innovative in providing additional assistance to their own citizens. This is a step in the right direction. This is not something that should be a partisan issue. In South Dakota, we did those changes with support from Republicans and Democrats alike. We thought we had solid support from our Democrat colleagues on this particular issue as well. 49 members of the United States Senate, all Republicans, included this when we voted on health care last year. We missed it by 1. With just a little bit of bipartisan support, we could make this a win-win for the American public. For states to be able to address the needs of health care on a state-by-state basis for what their needs are. But just as importantly, for individuals to reduce the cost by as much as 40% for the people that most need it. These are the working poor. People that go out, they work every single day, they make an income, but they simply can't afford to pay as much as a third of their entire income for a health care product for themselves. Here's a chance for Congress to actually function the way the people want it to do something which clearly reduces the cost of health care without impacting the quality of health care delivered at the local level. We hope that this is included in the omnibus bill. We'll do our best to see that it is. What we want are results. Results that Republicans and Democrats alike can go back and say, we did the right thing. Thank you. And at this time, Senator Isakson.
I'm going to be brief but succinct. This is not rocket science. This is not complicated. Every one of us got elected to the United States Senate to represent the people in our state and the biggest problems that they confront. And the cost of insurance and the inaccessibility of insurance coverage is at a crisis. In my state, 100 or more counties cannot get but one carrier to cover health insurance. Estimates are that premiums will go up next year by as much as 40%. Cost-sharing arrangements and reinsurance must be energized to see to it those don't happen. Democrats have chosen a political solution to make us look bad when, in fact, they're making the American people hurt. I am proud to stand with the Republicans that are with me here, as well as others that will be on the floor, talk about fighting for the people of Georgia and fighting for probably the single largest financial problem they have, and that's the cost of health insurance. The biggest family problem they have, that's the lack of accessibility to health insurance. But most importantly, talk to them about trying to do the right thing that elected officials were elected to do in the first place, and that's represent the people that put us here, not a political party. I urge all my colleagues on both sides to support the Alexander Collins bill and to work hard to see to it insurance is accessible and affordable for every American.
Well, I'm proud to be standing with a group of committed individuals that are focusing on what we know to believe to be the most significant issue in households across the country. In Alaska, wherever I go, I don't care what group I'm meeting with, whether it's educators or fishermen, invariably what comes up is the cost of what they are paying for their health care. You've heard me say time and time again, in Alaska we're off the charts when it comes to our health care costs and the costs of providing for that coverage. So when you have an initiative that can work to reduce those costs, you pay attention to it. Alaska really pioneered when Senator Rounds was talking about the reinsurance. As a state, several years ago, we embarked on a pretty risky initiative. We had to find $55 million in a state budget that didn't have $55 million extra sitting around. But we knew we had to do something because we had no sustainability, no stability within our markets. And so we advanced through a pretty difficult and tortured 1332 process. But we were able to implement a reinsurance program within our state. So what have we seen? If you want to know whether or not these ideas are actually helpful, all you need to do is look to the state of Alaska, where last year, instead of our premiums increasing, there was a decrease. This year, 22% decrease. So it's tangible, it's real, but it doesn't come about by accident. It comes about when you have some flexibility that is built into the law, whether it is how we can make the 1332 waiver process more accessible, more malleable given each state's individual situations, how we can make a reinsurance program, again, fit within the unique needs of each and every one. Well, we're trying to do this. We're trying to provide the answers. We're trying to respond to the concerns of whether it's an Alaskan who's paying over $1,000 a month for their insurance. Getting it down to $880 is not that much when you think about, well, we've reduced your rates, but who can afford $880 a month? So we've got an opportunity to do something. The way has been clearly identified, and the fact that we're at this place begging literally for insertion into an omnibus package that is truly just hours away is really quite telling about a political process that continues to disappoint. I'm not giving up because the people of Alaska won't let me give up.
Any questions?
Senator, I have two, but I promise one's easy. Can you explain, just in general terms, how similar this package is to what you developed with Senator Murray when it was a bipartisan effort, or more broadly a bipartisan effort?
Yes, and then Senator Collins might want to add to that. The package has three parts. The first two parts are basically the Alexander Murray bipartisan package. One is a regulatory reform, which makes it easier to use the 1332 waiver. Two is cost-sharing subsidies. The Alexander Murray had 2 years of them. This is more generous. It has 3. The major addition is that third year of cost-sharing, and then the major addition is the reinsurance plan that Senator Collins may want to explain. And Ryan Costello in the House, the two of them. Ryan, why don't you step up too, because you're the two who proposed that.
In the Senate, I introduced a bill with Senator Bill Nelson to provide reinsurance. And reinsurance has been a proven method of taking high-risk claims, reducing uncertainty, and it has benefits for not only those who have pre-existing conditions and are expensive to cover, but the entire market. And it's been proven to work in states like Alaska, like Maine. Our original bill provided for 2 years of reinsurance. It was improved by Representative Costello by adding a third year at $10 billion per year, plus we had $500 million to assist states in applying for reinsurance money. And the bill in the House also has the federal fallback, which you might want to talk about.
And I would add to what Senator Collins said as follows. Ask a governor if they support this effort. I really, literally, I don't know if any governor would oppose this. And the reason is because we're not getting too federally prescriptive or mandating. We're giving states flexibility to design it as they find appropriate, get the money to them, have them implement what they find appropriate, not telling them what they need to do, not going through a back and forth, submit paperwork, we'll review it, we'll get back to you when we feel like getting back to you. It gets money to them right away and allows them to administer the reinsurance program based upon their demographic and their potentially unique health care needs. And again, ask all 50 governors in this country if they support this effort. I would be very surprised if any governor opposes this. And so you have to ask yourself the question, yes, it's a Republican plan, but this is a nonpartisan proposal to address an issue which is going to explode next October, and we should be commended for running right down the middle of the road here and trying to solve a problem. And it's not too late for Democrats to be supportive of this.
Well, okay, so that sets up the harder question, which is I think when most Americans hear Hyde and Stupak, I think it sounds like a law firm. I mean, can someone say in sort of common English why you don't think Democrats can support this, or why Democrats won't support it?
Well, as a pro-choice Republican, I have to say that I am puzzled by the Democratic response to the language that is in the bill. The Hyde Amendment for some 40 years has prohibited the use of federal funds to pay for abortions. It is not just in the Medicaid program and the Medicare program. It's part of the Children's Health Insurance Program. It is part of the Federal Employees Health Benefits Insurance Program. It's part of TRICARE. It's part of all the VA health care programs. It applies to Indian Health Services. It is a common provision that is always included, and it is nothing new. We also do not change in this bill the Stupak language, which is Section 1303 of the Affordable Care Act, which allows for the segregation of funds. We do not change in this bill Section 507 of Hyde, standard language, which allows private entities, state governments, or individuals to use their funds to provide coverage for abortion. So this is nothing that is radical or new. It is standard Hyde language. And that is why I am so baffled at the opposition that has arisen from some of the Democrats.
You said just 2 weeks ago to me that if Democrats want to keep the system set up under Stupak, they'll have to win the White House and win the Congress back. But just in the fall, you co-authored a piece of legislation with Patty Murray that kept that language, that did not expand or use applied.
To kept what language?
So the system set up under Stupak where insurance companies can just segregate and look at coverage.
No, that's not true.
Well, I was wondering, no, but you conceded that there's a difference between the language in that bill and this bill. Without getting, but what changed between now and then?
Nothing has changed at all. As Senator Collins just said, the Stupak language is not being changed. All that we're doing is well, go ahead.
I don't want to get lost in the weeds,
Oh, well, then ask a question.
You yourself agreed. We talked
Well, what's your
about
question?
2 hours ago. What changed between when you released the bill with Patty Murray and when you released this bill that seemed to make you have a change of heart on how high to apply? Is there applied differently?
We have always said that this bill would go in the omnibus bill, to which the Hyde language has applied every year since 1976. Let me repeat that. This is in December. This was supposed to go into the omnibus spending bill, which didn't happen, or it would have, to which the Hyde language has always applied since 1976. So of the Alexander Murray language with the Costello, Collins, Nelson language were to be placed in the Labor H section of the omnibus bill, the Hyde language would automatically apply to it. That's always been the case. Nothing has changed. Now, you're looking puzzled. What do you think has changed?
What changes that plans can accept reinsurance and they can accept cost sharing reduction payments while they may off segregating those.
We have always said that, what I said to you earlier was the Hyde language has applied since 1976. Every year, Democrats have voted for it hundreds of times. We applied it to the community health, to 21st Century Cures when President Obama was president. Nobody complained about that. So we put it in the appropriations bill. That was the plan. What I said was the Stupak language was created with the Affordable Care Act at a time the Democrats had President Obama, 60 senators, and a majority in the House. No Republican voted for it. Democrats have voted hundreds of times for Hyde. Republicans have never voted for Stupak. What Democrats are saying is they want Stupak. That can't happen. What can happen is lowering the rates 40% by applying the language that's been applied to every appropriations bill since 1976.
If that is enough for this bill not to pass, which it clearly is.
Good question for the Democrats who are blocking it.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Here's the issue for my Democratic friends. You're going to blame us in October for premium increases is your goal. You have a chance now to work with us to lower premiums by 40%. And you're going to have to say that every federal dollar running through the system for health care is protected by Hyde. But you want these federal dollars not protected by Hyde, and you care so much about that you're going to watch people's premiums go up 40%. Now, how do you explain that you want just these dollars exempt from Hyde, and you've supported for decades every other health care dollar running through the Hyde system? This is phony. I hope you lose votes. I hope you lose seats. You're not worthy of governing this place. I work with these guys day in and day out. I've never been more disappointed in my Democratic colleagues of sitting on the sidelines and watching hardworking Americans pay a price in premiums because they're trying to win a political argument that I think is disingenuous, phony, and unworthy of a great party.
Senator Collins,
Senator Collins, if this is not included in the omnibus, are you willing to pursue this bill as a standalone, and is there time to do that?
Well, our goal is that it be included in the omnibus. As Senator Collins says, it's hard to see how it can be done this year in time for the 2019 rates unless we do it now. Also, if you can't agree on the Hyde language in the omnibus bill, how are you ever going to agree on it in a standalone bill?
Senator Alexander, do you have any assurance from Leader McConnell that this is going to come up for a vote at all?
No, but Senator McConnell has said to Senator Collins that it could come up for a vote if we request it.
Can I add something real quick there? The other thing to consider is you're going to have health insurance plans be designed, be submitted to state insurance commissioners to ultimately be approved by HHS. So we're spring, summer, fall. So if you don't have certainty on this in the next couple weeks or months at the most, you're going to run into problems from a coverage perspective as well. So that's why time is of the essence to do this now.
All right, let's do one more, folks. Senator Collins, you've tried to broker lots of bipartisan agreements recently. What does this kind of process speak towards future efforts for bipartisan talks on other subjects?
Well, that's a very good question, because this should have unanimous bipartisan support. It is, if anything, I would have guessed that we would have some opposition, which we do, from some on the far right. But I never would have envisioned that we would have opposition from Democratic members over this non-issue. So it is discouraging, because the message that it sends to me and to the American people is that there's very little interest in actually solving problems, and instead that the focus is on scoring partisan political points that can be used in the fall elections. And I think that is disgraceful, and that it is the wrong way to treat the American people, that we are letting them down when we have a solution to such an important problem. Thank you.
If I could just, going back to the very first question, I think it's important to make clear our proposal has three parts. The first two parts are essentially the Alexander Murray proposal that had 24 sponsors in the United States Senate, 12 Republicans, 12 Democrats. In fact, almost every Democrat wanted to be a co-sponsor, and not enough Republicans did. So they limited the number of Democrats. Senator Schumer said afterwards that every single Democrat in the Senate could vote for it. And Tom Perez, the chairman of the National Democratic Party, said it was a great bipartisan proposal. That's 2/3 of this proposal. The one thing that was not in it is the reinsurance proposal. I didn't put that in, even though most senators asked me to on both sides of the aisle, because it cost money. It cost money. And it started out as a $5 billion proposal over 2 years, and ended up, as, because of Representative Costello's work and Senator Collins', $30 billion over 10 years. It was the single most widely supported proposal as a result of our bipartisan hearings and coffees that we held that more than half the Senate attended in the fall. So you have two provisions that the Democratic leader has said every single senator on the Democratic side could vote for, and you have a third provision originating in the House and with Collins and Nelson that is the most widely supported other provision, and that's the provision that will lower rates by up to 40% that the Democrats are blocking because they won't vote for Hyde language that has been voted for every single year in the appropriations bill since 1976, which they have voted for hundreds of times, including the whole time President Obama was in office. That is the issue, and that is what's happening, and that's why we believe it's urgent that this be in the omnibus bill.
Senator Collins, can you just clarify whether you're going to request a vote from later?
Well, the first step is to see if the language is included in the House version of the omnibus. That's obviously the best way to go, and that's what I hope will happen. Then it would come over to the Senate with it already incorporated into the omnibus. So that is the plan. I just want to make one final comment on reinsurance. If you talk not only to governors, but if you talk to insurance commissioners across this country, you will find that they are very eager to have access to reinsurance, and that they are very positively inclined toward our bill. And it's important to note that reinsurance and abortion have nothing to do with one another, because reinsurance is devised to handle expensive claims. So the idea that a reinsurance pool would be called upon to pay a claim for an abortion is just not the real world. So that's another reason that I think this is a phony argument and a disappointing one at
And
that.
I misspoke. It's $10 billion over
3 years.
It's $30 billion over 3 years.
I mean, it's $30 billion.
$30 billion over 3 years.
I misspoke twice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
That really clears it up.
Thank you,
Ryan.
Senator.
Nice job.
Thank you, Senator.
Give you a shot?
That was fun.
Yeah. You gonna be back for the next one too?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Make sure you Right. So, I think I want to do it 4 hours.